All right, so you want to take a deep dive into what's happening in Kenyan politics, huh? Specifically, what's going on with Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and this impeachment drama?
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it? I mean, we went from celebrating Gachagua's like political genius last year to now everybody's wondering if he'll even be in office next week. Remember, he was a huge part of President Ruto's win last year.
Right, Gachagua was essential,
Mm.
especially pulling in those votes from central Kenya. That was a game changer. But
Well,
now it's like the same stuff that got him the win, that super direct, almost aggressive style. Now it might be what takes him down.
yeah, it's that old story, right?
Hmm.
The thing that makes you strong can also be your weakness. See, Gachagua, he wasn't afraid to call people out, especially, the previous president's guy. He was all about central Kenya, their economy, their politics. But he made some serious enemies along the way.
And those enemies are coming for him now.
Exactly. And they aren't playing around either. These impeachment charges, they're heavy stuff. This isn't just like a political disagreement.
So break it down for us. What are the actual accusations?
Okay, so they're saying he's undermining the government. Then there's the ethnically charged politics accusations. And on top of all that, straight up corruption and misconduct. And listen, when I say ethnically charged politics in Kenya, you got to understand that's really serious. It's not just about disagreeing on policy. This stuff can get really volatile.
Right, because in Kenya, those political lines often fall along ethnic lines, which has historically caused some major problems.
Exactly, and violence too.
Mhm.
So you've got these super serious accusations against this backdrop of, let's be honest, a really fragile economic situation in Kenya.
Yeah.
It's like adding fuel to the fire. And what's
Yeah.
crazy is the public is really fired up about all of this. Remember those public hearings they had on October 4th?
Yeah, thousands of people showed up,
Right.
right? It's not every day you see citizens so worked up
Yeah.
about what could seem like an internal political power struggle.
Exactly. You had people who totally believe in Gachagua, convinced these accusations are bogus, and then you have others who are like, he's got to go. He's a liability to Ruto and the whole country.
It's like this whole thing is a test, not just for Gachagua, but for Ruto's leadership, maybe even for Kenyan democracy itself.
You got it. And don't forget, these charges against Gachagua, they go way beyond just like disagreeing with the president or making a political misstep. We're talking potential criminal activity here, real legal trouble. Now, of course, his lawyers are fighting back, trying to get these impeachment proceedings thrown out.
But it's got to be tough, right? Because the accusations are pretty specific.
Exactly. This isn't just some vague thing. They're pointing to specific instances, and that makes it harder to just brush it off.
Okay, so let's talk worst case scenario. What if Gachagua is actually removed? What happens then?
Oh man, that's when it gets really interesting. See, Kenya, they've never actually removed a deputy president through impeachment. So this would be totally uncharted territory.
So it sets a precedent, for better or worse.
Exactly. And who knows what that means for the future of Kenyan politics? Could make things really unstable, especially now, with Ruto already dealing with this shaky economy. And remember those huge protests earlier this year.
Right, you got to think about those protests too.
Hmm.
Even though they weren't directly about Gachagua, it shows how much tension is already simmering in Kenya right now. People are unhappy, anxious about the economy, and this Gachagua situation. It just adds more fuel to that fire.
For sure. And then there's the international piece too, right?
Yeah.
Kenya's trying to navigate all these global tensions, trade deals, you name it. They want to be seen as a reliable player on the world stage. But this kind of internal drama, that sends a very different message.
It's like the whole world is watching this play out. This one situation, it's a microcosm of so much bigger stuff. It's about power, for sure, but it's also about what Kenya wants to be, both at home and on the world stage.
And what's so crazy is we're about to see a major turning point, like right now. Gachagua, he's holding a press conference today, October 7th at 7 p.m., and this is just one day before the impeachment proceedings start.
So the timing of this, it's deliberate. The world's going to be watching how he responds to all of this.
Oh, yeah, it's a high-wire act, for sure.
Uh-huh.
Does he come out swinging, denying everything? Does he try to make peace with Ruto, smooth things over? Or does he do the unthinkable? Does he resign?
Each option has huge implications, not just for him, but for the whole country. What happens in the next 48 hours? It could have ripple effects for years to come in Kenya. This is big. It's crazy, right? Like in a few hours, we'll have some answers here. We'll know what direction this whole thing is going to go.
Yeah, and, even if Gachagua makes it through this, I don't think Kenyan politics will ever be quite the same. Like, something shifted, Power dynamics are changing.
For sure. And what's wild is how much attention this has gotten from everyday Kenyans.
Right.
Remember those public hearings? The crowds, the energy, it was intense.
Yeah, it reminds you, at the end of the day, this isn't just politicians playing games. This is about the future of Kenya.
Exactly. And that takes us back to your question. Could this whole thing actually change Kenyan democracy? Like, for the better?
Absolutely, that's the big question. This whole crisis, win or lose for Gachagua, it's shown everyone how things really work in Kenyan politics, the alliances, how fragile they are, the power struggles behind the scenes, all of it.
So, what are you looking for to know if this is actually going to lead to lasting change? Or is it back to business as usual?
That's a good question. I'll be watching to see if this gets more everyday Kenyans involved. Like, will people demand more transparency, make the government more accountable? Will we see more people getting organized, demanding better?
It's because the worst thing is if this just leads to apathy, right?
Yeah.
But people feeling like it's rigged, their voice doesn't matter, so why even bother?
You got it. But if this situation, as messy as it is, if it makes people realize, hey, we got to pay attention, the stakes are too high, that could be powerful. That could lead to real change.
It's like we're watching a political thriller in real time.
Totally. And the best part, we have no idea what the next twist is going to be.
It's kind of surreal, like in a few hours,
Yeah.
we're going to have some answers, see where this is all headed.
Yeah, but I think even if Gachagua gets through this Kenyan politics, it's change. We just saw a huge shift, the power, it's all moving around.
Yeah, and it's like the Kenyan people, they're really part of this. I keep thinking about those public hearings, how many people were there, how much they cared.
Totally. At the end of the day, it's their country,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And so that question you had before, could this be a turning point for their democracy? It all comes down to them, doesn't it?
That's the million-dollar question. This whole crisis, however it ends, it ripped the cover off Kenyan politics. The alliances, how easily they break, all the stuff happening behind the scenes.
So what are you watching for? Like, how can we tell if this is real change or just more of the same old stuff?
Okay, so I'm going to be looking at what the people do. Do they get more involved, demand more transparency from the government, start organizing, pushing for better?
Because the worst thing is if they just give up,
Right.
feel like the system's rigged, their voice doesn't matter anyway.
100%. But if this whole crazy situation wakes them up, makes them realize we got to be part of this, the stakes are too high, then that's where real change comes from.
Well, I guess we're saying that this deep dive, it's ending with more questions than answers.
Maybe. But maybe the biggest takeaway is pay attention to Kenya. Stay informed, keep talking about the tough stuff. Because the future, it's not just up to the politicians, right? It's up to everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And hey, to everyone listening, thank you for diving deep with us on this one. It's been wild, and we'll be watching just like you to see what happens next.
Stay curious, everyone.
Until next time, keep diving deep.